In the 80s and 90s, wrestling games didn't usually have official licenses, but the devs and publishers would try to get pretty close to the real thing.
Weight of 956 pounds, Alan the Empire.
The WWF and Japanese promotions were obviously a big influence, meaning one world champion was sometimes overlooked. Ric Flair was often at the top of WCW and the NWA during the early years of wrestling gaming, and while he did appear in a ton of official games over the years, across generations of consoles,
1, 2, 3.
Let's take a look at the times Ric Flair wasn't really himself, but close enough. Nintendo's own pro wrestling game for the Famicom and NES is a good place to begin, looking at King Slender, the Video Wrestling Association champion. As well as a resemblance to Flair, the manual reveals that his place of birth is Georgia, USA, which was home to the studios WCW used for TV and later the company's HQ. The game's developer, Masato Masuda, would leave Nintendo and go on to work on the Fire Pro Wrestling series over the years, with Goichi Suda, aka Suda51, making his directorial debut on Super Fire Pro Wrestling Special. The game's infamous Champion Road campaign and main villain Dick Slender deserve a deep dive all to themselves, and I don't want to spoil that for you if you haven't heard the story already. So let's move on to UWC, which was unreleased and undiscovered by wrestling fans for 3 decades, but is possibly the first game to include Ric Flair and the other stars of the NWA.
World Championship Wrestling!
What did get an official release in 1989 was World Championship Wrestling, but looking through the move list for Ric Flair, you'll see his trademark figure 4 leg lock is actually missing, and he looks less authentic compared to in UWC, since he's wearing long tights for some reason. The game was effectively a reskin of Superstar Pro Wrestling for the Famicom,
Superstar Pro Wrestling!
which featured characters based on the stars of Japanese wrestling such as Giant Baba. Looking through Flair's moves again, you'll see Baba's signature head chop, and they both share the exact same move set, so you're really playing as a tribute to Baba in either version. On first impressions, Tecmo World Wrestling's Mark Rose seems to only resemble Flair a little on the selection screen, but the more you carry on, you see the similar ring attire, and even though his finishing move is the Northern Lights suplex, he also does the figure 4. Tecnos Japan developed Hybrid Wrestler based on the Japanese MMA promotion Pancrase. Looking through the list of characters though, you'll find a character known as RJ Silver. This guy doesn't just look a lot like Flair, but he also uses the figure 4 leg lock as a finishing move. Pro Wrestling Sengokuden Hyper Tag Match for the PlayStation contains fictional equivalents of wrestlers from Japan and the USA, with one named Rick Ace. The animations in the game are pretty disappointing, and I'll let this action speak for itself, but it's worth looking at for an example of a Ric Flair imitation. For those with the 3DO, there's an amazing roster of imitations capturing stars of the USA, Japan and Mexico in the Japanese release Royal Pro Wrestling.
Listen up, this is the real pro wrestling. Once you get a taste of the royal wrestling, you'll realize that you amount to nothing and never will. I'll break your spirit along with a couple of bones and you're rife with pain. Woo!
Each of them even have their own pre-match interviews, including the Underdates.
I'm the Undertaker, Morgan, and I'll send you to the grave.
The Undertaker, okay? Morgan, get it? But here's what you've been waiting for. Ric Flair. Complete with the signature woo and the figure 4 to win his matches, Ric Flair is probably the next best thing to the man himself. And if you enjoyed this trip through wrestling gaming history, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more retrocade89, and we'll see you soon.